So we just finished up talking a little bit about the effects of exercise on your personality. And we said that with personality, we will see an improvement or an increase in self-confidence, improved imagination, and self-sufficiency. Now we want to take this to another step further and take a look at the development of self. So exercise is related to self-concept, self-esteem, and self-efficacy. So again, when we think about what is self-concept, it's basically who you believe you truly are. So when we think about self-concept, it's not about what others perceive of you or what others think about you. It's more about who you truly believe that you are. Okay, so self-concept incorporates all aspects of what we truly think of ourselves. So exercise is effective at improving self-concept in individuals that had a lower self-esteem to start with. So again, this can enhance our perception of who we believe we are and what we value. Okay, so changes in self-esteem can be maintained for at least 1 year. But again, when we think about the effects of exercise, we want to think about this in a chronic sense. So doing exercise chronically will help us to kind of maintain that self-esteem and also maintain that self-concept. This is important because strong self-concept is critical to any healthy psychological development. So again, this is an important portion for us, especially when we're looking at kids. Participation in directed play and physical activity programs can help to improve self-concept. So that's great. Again, when we think about women in particular, physical acceptance and, how we kind of view our body, that's part of self-concept. So who you truly are has a little bit to do with body image as well. So for females, physical acceptance in conjunction with regular exercise can certainly help to improve our self-concept. Another concept that I think is really interesting is this concept of hardiness. And hardiness is a personality style that will enable a person to withstand or cope with stressful situations. Grit, it might be another term that can be kind of thrown into this slide. So when we think about grit, it's kind of our passion and persistence to try to achieve a goal or task. Okay, so again, how hard are we willing to continue to work for a prolonged period of time towards a particular goal? So stress can produce minimal debilitating effects in hardy personalities. So again, when we think about, overcoming some type of obstacle, if I'm a hardy person, I'm able to prepare for those stressful situations. And when I'm faced with some type of adversity, I can say something like, you know what? Yeah, this sucks that this happened, but I'm going to get through it and I'm going to be stronger because of it. You're hardy if you have the following traits. So you feel like you're in control of your life, you're in control over external events, not necessarily external events, but how you handle those external events. So there's a saying, life's not what happens to you, it's how you respond, right? So again, we're thinking about this with a hardy person, they're going to respond very positively and face those challenges as a challenge and not as a setback, but think about how you might be able to overcome those. So people that are hardy have a sense of involvement, commitment, and purpose in their daily life. They're very focused on what it is that they want to achieve, and they don't care if something happens. They're going to find a way to push through and be determined to achieve that goal. Okay. Hardiness in combination with exercise can help us to reduce the negative consequences of stress. So again, once you have experienced something hard or challenging and you're able to overcome that, that can certainly build this quality in you. Okay, so again, being able to overcome a stressful or difficult situation will help you to have the confidence the next time you face something like that. So again, this can be a positive thing that you can certainly build over time. So we think about the effect of exercise on cognitive functioning. Motor development is important for the development of children as it relates to cognitive functioning and intelligence. So learning potential or cognitive capacity can vary with a person's physical fitness level. So, we're not saying that if you exercise a lot, you're going to be the smartest person in the world, but we're saying that your capacity to improve as it relates to cognitive function will increase if I exercise regularly. Okay, so again, I'm going to get closer to my potential if I am exercising regularly. Okay, exercise and physical activity are also important when we think about the other end of the spectrum, when we think about aging, when we think about cognitive decline with old age. So aerobic exercise can cut your risk of Alzheimer's in half and also decrease your risk of dementia as well. So when we think about cognitive functioning, it's on both ends. So it's on the developmental side for children, but it's also on the aging side as well when we think about cognitive decline as we age. Okay, there's a moderate relationship between exercise and improved cognitive functioning. So executive central command, working memory, planning, scheduling, multitasking, dealing with ambiguity or doubt and uncertainty, all of those factors can be improved with regular exercise. Okay. We also see a relationship between, as we mentioned, memory capacity and exercise. So working memory, our short-term memory, is involved with an intentional control, a regulation and active maintenance of a limited amount of information with immediate relevance to the task at hand. So again, we think about our working memory or this kind of short-term memory. Again, we're able to enhance that with regular exercise. Okay, so moderate to vigorous exercise is also going to improve these factors in children with various issues such as ADD and ADHD. Okay, so again, regular exercise can help this type of person to stay more focused for a longer period of time to kind of overcome these things. What type of exercise do these people need to do? It can be both aerobic or strength training. Okay, so again, it doesn't really matter. As long as we get them moving, as long as we get them doing something, both will have a positive effect in the cognitive realms. In general, we see that quality of life is enhanced with regular exercise. So again, quality of life refers to an individual's perception of their position in life in context of the culture and value systems in which they live in relation to their goals, expectations, standards, and concerns. So when we think about quality of life, it's all about your perception and it's all about what you envision for yourself. Okay, so physically active people tend to be in better health. They're going to have better stamina. They're going to have more positive attitudes towards work, and they also have a greater ability to cope with stress and tension. So they're able to kind of overcome, some of those adverse situations. Exercise can also produce small increases in total sleep time. So I definitely feel like if I don't get a good workout in, it might not be just one day. Let's say I had like 3 days where I didn't really do a whole lot or didn't do anything strenuous. I don't sleep well at all, or I can't get to sleep, or I don't have quality sleep. So we do know that exercise, especially vigorous exercise, this makes sense, will improve our sleep quality and can increase, the amount of time that we spend sleeping. Older individuals who are physically active report greater life satisfaction. Again, that might be because that they are able to be independent for a longer period of time and they are overall physically healthier. That makes sense. We can also think about the relationship between socio-demographic variables, so income, education, marital status, and age are not significantly related to perceptions of quality of life. Okay, so again, when we standardize quality of life as it relates to income level, education, marital status, age, again, across all kind of demographic groups, if we exercise, we see an improvement of quality of life. So I think that that's super powerful. It doesn't matter who you are. It seems like exercise is going to have a positive effect on any of us as it relates to, these cognitive functions. Okay. We talked about runner's high, and again, I just think this is just a really interesting concept, and I've got a couple slides to kind of talk about this. So again, runner's high, an addictive side effect of running, a euphoric state of bliss that may be the reason that runners run. And again, we talked about this in class, but it doesn't have to be running. It can be many, many other different things to get this same experience. It can be any vigorous type of workout. It can even be music. So there's lots of ways for us to get this kind of feeling, okay? The true but rare runner's high is a zone we enter when everything seems to click perfectly, when time stands still, and we can almost run without effort. Okay, so again, you think about how this might apply to many other areas of your life, right? You think about this as like being in the zone. Time seems to slow down and everything feels kind of effortless and easy and perfect. Okay, so that's the runner's high. What does our textbook say about it? So again, it's this euphoric, spiritual feeling where everything feels easy and effortless. Again, what are some other things that you might experience when you have the runner's high? So you might have an enhanced appreciation for nature. Okay. Again, time and space seem to kind of stand still, right? So again, it's kind of this euphoric state that's certainly cognitive, right? It's certainly a psychological state. And so, what conditions can facilitate the runner's high? We don't believe that we can accurately predict when we get this. So, again, it doesn't necessarily happen every time you run, or every time you exercise, or every time you listen to that song or music or whatever. But here are some conditions that we see that there's a link with. Okay, so it requires a longer distance, so we need to do at least 30 minutes of something in order to get to this point. And it can be that limbic system is going to be activated. Okay, so this is the same area that's activated during romantic love, or when we're listening to music, as we mentioned. Okay, so again, we cannot reliably predict this, but it's facilitated by the presence of few distractions. It can also help if the weather is cool and calm, with low humidity as well. Okay, so again, what is happening when we experience this? Evidence of chemical changes within the brain. So again, endorphins are produced and attached to the limbic and prefrontal areas. So again, you get this kind of emotional response, where things do feel very easy and effortless. So we think about the relationship again between exercise and cognitive function. We think about cognition and cognitive function. It's really a pretty broad term. But when we think about this again, what are some of the components that will be affected by exercise? Attention, concentration, sensory skills, motor skills, language, visual skills, memory, problem solving, judgment, even moral reasoning as well. So again, if you're like, I don't know what to do about this ethical situation, I'm not sure what the right thing is to do, maybe stop and do, some rhythmic exercise where you don't really have to think a lot, and give yourself that time to really think about it, while you're doing some exercise, and that might improve your judgment. Okay. What are the physical effects of exercise? Wow, we could spend a lot of time talking about the physical or the physiological benefits or effects of exercise. Chronic exercise will elicit so many physiological changes that are just awesome. But again, let's look at what's going on as it relates to the brain, right? So we see an increase in capillary density to the brain. And so basically what that means is we're able to send more blood to the brain, or to those brain tissues, easier, basically. We see an increased blood flow to the brain, which will improve the cellular health of those brain cells and can actually foster cell growth, and maintenance. Okay. Blood washes away metabolic byproducts, wastes, and other issues such as the amyloid beta protein. So again, this can kind of help us in terms of kind of our general health. This amyloid beta protein is implicated with the development of Alzheimer's. So again, if I have a lot of this protein kind of floating around in my brain, that increases my risk of developing Alzheimer's and even dementia. So if I can kind of increase my heart rate and get the blood to kind of wash that away, that will help us to reduce the likelihood of developing Alzheimer's. Okay. Exercise will enhance our stress tolerance. So again, your body doesn't know necessarily the difference between physical stress and psychological stress. So putting your body in a stressful situation helps you to be able to cope with stress in the future a little bit easier. Okay. Again, we become accustomed to one of the physiological changes is cortisol levels. So we see an increase in cortisol levels when we put ourselves in any stress, whether that again is physical stress or psychological stress. So again, I'm stressed out because I got in a fight with my boyfriend, versus I'm experiencing this stress because I did a hard workout. Your body doesn't know the difference. So we're going to release this hormone, cortisol, regardless of the scenario. And so again, because I'm doing that kind of more regularly with exercise, I'm better able to handle the stress of being in a fight with my boyfriend, or whatever that, that psychological or emotional issue is that I might be dealing with. I think this is super interesting too. So here we're going to look at neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity refers to the ability of the brain to shape itself according to the experience that you have. Okay. So basically what we're looking at here is our ability to adapt in the brain, which is kind of crazy to think about, right? So again, this refers to the physical change from a neuronal level. So again, if you imagined each of these little, let's see if I can get my little pointer out here. So each of these little things is like a little cell, and each of these little lines is like a connection to another cell. Okay. When I learn something, okay, I'm going to create more synapses. So again, this cell is going to have more interactions with other cells. Sorry, I shouldn't have chose red. But the more I learn, the more interactions I create, or the more synapses I create from cell to cell. Okay, so those synapses can be built between the neurons. The strength of the synapses can also be improved when we learn things. Okay, so again, this synapse from this cell to this cell might get stronger as I continue to learn things. Okay, so again, we see some of these changes when we learn things. Certainly, we also see these changes when we do exercise. Okay, so does exercise foster neuroplasticity? Again, exercise increases growth factors in the brain, which makes it easier for us to make those new connections. And basically, like, I think the interesting thing about intelligence is we believe that you're kind of born with a certain number of cells, and we develop intelligence by making more connections. So the more connections we have, the higher our intelligence is. Okay, so when we increase growth factors in the brain, it makes it easier for us to grow those connections. And so again, that allows us to gain more intelligence. So here's an example. So mice ran on a wheel, had twice as many new brain connections in comparisons to mice that didn't have that opportunity to kind of run. Okay, so growth occurred specifically in the hippocampus, which is where learning and memory have storage. So again, we've kind of established now in this lecture that relationship between memory and exercise, learning and exercise, and how those kinds of things are interrelated as it relates to the neuroplasticity within the brain. So what do we need to do in order to kind of get this? So a meta-analysis of 18 controlled studies. So basically a meta-analysis is when they take like a bunch of studies that have been done and kind of compile them and look at those all together in order to determine, like, at the end of the day, like what's the best case scenario, or like what is probably most likely to be true. Okay. So exercise has clear benefits for organization, attention, and planning. So people that exercise regularly are more organized, they have a better attention span, and they're better able to plan. Okay. Strength training combined with aerobic fitness was the most effective, not surprising. Exercise sessions of less than 30 minutes had little impact. Okay, so again, we need to do more than 30 minutes each day, 30 minutes or more, in order to kind of see some of these psychological or cognitive benefits associated with exercise. So again, kind of closing things out here, we want to take a look at some of the guidelines associated with exercise training for persons with depression. So again, we want to be aware of what kind of some of those symptoms are for some of these mental disorders. We want to avoid minimizing a person's feelings or concerns. So again, I think it's really important for us to recognize that each person is individual, and their challenges are going to be individual and unique. And so that's important for us to kind of acknowledge and understand that each of us, maybe all of us, are in the same situation, but how we're going to cope with that and how we kind of internalize that is different. And that's okay, right? So again, we want to avoid minimizing, a person's feelings. We want to establish boundaries in our relationships with our patients. Again, imagine that we're a coach, right? So again, if I'm a coach and I'm working with an athlete, we want to make sure we establish some appropriate boundaries there. Assess current physical activity habits and fitness. Determine the person's motivation to begin exercising or maintain exercise. What's their driving force. Make the exercise enjoyable, non-threatening. Make it accessible. So again, make it as easy as we possibly can. Encourage personal responsibility by including the person in the planning of the practice or the exercise. And be prepared for non-adherence and excuses as well. Again, that might be part of the issues associated with depression. Encourage the person to increase physical activity outside of those kind of scheduled practices or established exercise sessions, and then be aware of behavior as it relates to reinforcement as well. So using exercise as an adjunct to therapy, again, we mentioned that exercise should be an important component of this, but maybe not the only component. So we want to explore the client's exercise history, so their good and their bad experiences. Again, if they had a really bad experience with running, maybe that's going to add to their anxiety. So we want to avoid that type of activity. We want to use individualized exercise prescription for duration, intensity, frequency. So again, we need to follow some guidelines so that we don't put them at risk for a physical injury as well. We want to evaluate the influence of family and friends. So how much support do they have from family and friends? Develop a plan if they, aren't adhering to the exercise plan. Make exercise practical and functional. Encourage exercise as an adjunct to other forms of therapy. So again, maybe they also need medication. Maybe they also need to have counseling. And then lastly, include a variety of types of exercise and that sort of thing as well to kind of keep them engaged. So certainly, we're going to do a whole unit on overtraining and burnout and kind of some of those, what I would consider the dark side of exercise or the dark side of sport. So again, this is just kind of a short glimpse of that, but we think about hazards of exercise. The risk of disturbed mood can be seen in endurance athletes who become overtrained, okay? Staleness is a syndrome characterized by increase in tension and depression, chronic fatigue, loss of appetite, they're not sleeping well, a decrease in sex drive, decreased performance, suppression of the immune system. So again, those are all kind of symptoms of overtraining. Excessive exercise can also be a problem in non-athletes as well. So again, we think about this exercise addiction and how that might be a problem. For athletes, but also non-athletes as well, right? Compulsive exercise or exercise dependence. Again, we'll talk about this in our dark side unit, which is coming up. An exercise routine might take priority over everything else in their life, whether that's work, family, friends, social functions. So again, if somebody is kind of prioritizing their exercise habits above everything else in their life and they're doing that all the time, that might be an issue. Okay. So the person will continue to exercise despite a serious injury, and they'll experience feelings of withdrawal, guilt, anxiety, depression, if they can't get that exercise session in. So again, more to come on the exercise addiction. I believe that is our next unit. All right. Have a great day. Thanks for tuning in.